In a dark comedic twist, Florida fired Billy Napier after a victory. The man who was on the hot seat for more than a year, Billy Napier, is finally out at Florida, which now kicks off a most intriguing coaching search in which most of the early attention will be on Lane Kiffin. But is it Lane Kiffin or bust for Florida? We will get into that today on this edition of SEC Football Unfiltered, our podcast from the USA Today Network. I'm Blake Toppmeyer, alongside John Adams. John, we will get to coaching candidates for Florida in a moment, but start off, how would you put into words the Billy Napier era, experience, tenure that was at Florida?
He was no Dan Mullen. He wasn't even a Jim McElwain. He wasn't even a Will Muschamp, who once had only a 2-loss season. Billy, if nothing else, was consistent. And what you saw was what you got. Okay? Remember all how detail-oriented he was? That was the big selling point when it hired Sunbelt Billy from Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
All these details. He hired a bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he hired somebody to open a door. He hired somebody
to close the door.
Yeah, to walk with him to his car in the parking lot. He just hired all kinds of people. And so when you bring in a new coach like that, everybody wants to be optimistic. Everybody wants to get excited. Oh, this guy's real detail-oriented. Yeah, well, how detailed have the Gators been? My gosh, that offense can't get out of its way.
Yeah, I got a controversial take for you, John. I have my suspicions that you won't entirely agree with this, but I have a theory on Billy Napier. You know, coaches are asked to do so much nowadays. It's much more than just standing on the sidelines and calling ball plays. My theory on Billy Napier was he was an average to above average CEO. I don't think he was a terrible CEO. I think the program itself, he did some good things. I think he brought some talent into Gainesville. I just think he was such a bad game day coach that it really didn't matter that he was an above average CEO, that he was bringing some talent into Gainesville. I really think the toppling of Billy Napier was Billy Napier as a football coach on game day, which was interesting because it's like a 180 of Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen, I thought, was a very good game day coach, X's and O's. He just didn't want to recruit like Kirby Smart, and that caught up with him. But I'm curious what you think about that theory that I have, that I actually think Billy Napier was a decent CEO. He was just a bad coach on Saturdays, and he made the problem worse by never hiring an offensive coordinator and by insisting that he be the one who called the plays.
One of the most ominous things I heard in preseason was when Billy Napier said he'll be calling the plays.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that just took the life out of the season for the Gator fans. Yeah, you're right. Just how about this? You have a combo of if you had Dan Mullen and Billy Napier, if you had just split the duties, have Billy Napier as your CEO, although he doesn't really look like a CEO.
No, anyway, maybe he's a strange company. Maybe that sells paper clips or something. Maybe one of those binders he's got, a binder company. CEO of that.
You go in his office and there's like a stack of notebooks piled up toward the ceiling. Yeah, here are my details on a coffee break. Here's how you do it. I'm going to break it down for you. But yeah, if you had him as CEO and Dan Mullen shows up on game day in his spiffy new sneakers and, all well rested, just ready to roll. I think it would have been a nice combo.
Yeah. Isn't there a skit on Seinfeld where Jerry and George think about splitting the boyfriend responsibilities for a significant other? That sometimes the job's too big for one person, and same is true, I guess, in coaching.
Yeah. What did they say? One person can't give you everything.
No, but Florida will Florida will try. And so let's do this, John. As we like to do, we're going to have a round of our game of love it, like it, or no thanks, as I fire off some potential candidates for Florida's coaching opening. And I'm asking you from the school's perspective, do you love it? Do you like it? Or no thanks on these candidates? So let's start with the obvious. Lane Kiffin.
Love it.
Eli Drinkwitz.
Like it.
James Franklin.
Love it.
Jed Fish.
No thanks.
John Sumrall at Tulane.
No thanks.
SMU coach Rhett Lashley.
No thanks.
South Florida coach Alex Golish.
No thanks.
No introduction needed, Urban Meyer.
Oh, absolutely love it. Let's go.
And I saved this one for last, John, just for you. John Gruden.
Oh, love it, but only if you hire him on Halloween so we can break out the Chucky dolls.
What about if I'm not hiring him on Halloween?
Yeah, I still like it. Okay, I guess. Not really.
And there you
But I want to do it. I mean, I would like to see it. So personally, I guess you wanted me to do this from the school's perspective.
Yeah, from your perspective, I know you would love seeing John Gruden.
Oh, yeah.
The columns write themselves.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, just think of all the Chucky dolls you could say in the university bookstore. So, I mean, geez.
Okay, so let's start at the top of the list with Lane Kiffin and Eli Drinkwitz, two maybe of the likeliest names for this search. You say you love Lane Kiffin, you like Eli Drinkwitz. It's interesting, John. If you go back and look since the start of the 2023 season, so the last 2.5 seasons, the records for Eli Drinkwitz and Lane Kiffin are identical. How about that? That's interesting because I think these coaches are viewed a little bit differently, and maybe they should be. I'm not arguing against that. But in terms of success in the last 2.5 years, they've been the same coach. Now, and you even go beyond that. Both of them more offensive-minded coaches. Heck, they both wear a visor on game days. You think that might work at Florida? They both got some sass and some swagger to them. But it just, Drinkwitz doesn't move the needle for whatever reason anywhere close to Lane Kiffin. And I think if you told a Florida fan, hey, these guys got the same record in the last 2.5 seasons, they'd say, yeah, who cares? Drinkwitz is not Lane Kiffin. They want Kiffin by and large in the Florida fan base. You said you love Lane Kiffin. You more in the like mode with Eli Drinkwitz. How do you differentiate the two?
Well, one of the problems with Drinkwitz, first of all, people aren't sure what to call him. His name's Eli, and then he became Eli, and then it was kind of back and forth. And then he said, well, my friends call me Eli. Well, I'm not his friend, so I called him Eli, but seems as though I was the only person calling him Eli when I wrote my column. So I've gone to Eli now. That's an issue. For some reasons, when I think of Eli Drinkwitz, and he's a pretty good quote too, I think that's a plus at Florida. It's a plus anywhere from my perspective. But I think of Jim McElwain when I hear Eli Drinkwitz. And Jim McElwain was an offensive guy. I would like to see more of a track record for Eli, or you can call me Eli Drinkwitz. I would just, if he maybe done more. He's been blessed, and you could say the same for Lane Kiffin the last 2 years with that interim schedule. He's had a fairly cushy SEC schedule, as cushy as you can get in this conference. It wasn't Oklahoma's brutal schedule, for example. Right. It wasn't even Alabama's. So it was the thing with Lane Kiffin, if you make the Kiffin Drinkwitz comparison, Lane's been around. I mean, came to Tennessee for 1 year, but he really improved the program. Just there for 1 year and then off to Southern Cal. Southern Cal, his program was in horrible shape because of the NCAA sanctions, scholarship limitations. Then he won at Florida Atlantic. He's got more of a track record. I just, and you're right. I think public perception is, oh man, Lane Kiffin. They just see him. It's as though they give him more credit. He's done good things, but they give him even more credit than what he's earned.
Yeah, and I think it's just because it comes a little more naturally to Lane. Like they do have in some ways kind of a similar personality. They can get the jokes out there. They get the laugh line. Drinkwitz was the one calling Kalen DeBoer's now famous black hoodie, the black hoodie of death. He can turn a phrase. It comes more naturally to Lane. I've often said Drinkwitz is Lane Kiffin with a worse haircut and cornier jokes. Like the jokes are more natural for Lane. The haircut, not an expert on haircuts. My haircut comes cheap, but seems like maybe it's a little more expensive of a haircut. You know what I'm saying? Like everything's a little bit smoother with Lane, even if the record is the same and they get lumped into the same camp, but they really, I don't know, it's just like one's an imitation of the personality and the other one's more the real thing, it feels like to me.
I think it's also like Eli Drinkwitz can get excited after a win, any win. And whereas Lane Kiffin he's deadpan, and Lane Kiffin looks like, well, of course we won. Why would I get excited? Of course we won. Now he gets excited when he calls a touchdown play. But yeah, Drinkwitz, you get the feeling like almost like he's overachieving to do what he does. Whereas Lane, he's just kind of, yep, here we go.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I think that beyond the personality, I think the win that Kiffin got against Kirby Smart in Georgia last year, that was a real resume booster. I mean, I mentioned in the last 2.5 seasons, both these guys, Drinkwitz and Kiffin, they're 27-6 at programs where 27-6 in a 2.5-year span looks pretty darn good. Talking about Ole Miss and Missouri, but Kiffin has that win last year against Georgia. It was dominating. Now, he blew it after that, and he blew it before that with a loss to Kentucky. But he's got that signature win, whereas I think at Missouri, people look at what Drinkwitz has achieved fairly or unfairly and sort of say, like, yeah, but every time they go up against a big team in a big game, they always lose. And I think it feels a little bit more like a mirage. Again, fairly or unfairly, that's the perception. It feels a little bit more as a mirage at Missouri, partially because I think there's this idea, well, the schedule draw was pretty ideal for Missouri the last couple of years. Now, I do think Drinkwitz could change that perception here in the backstretch of the season. You look at what Missouri has left. He's got at Vanderbilt. We have to now take Vanderbilt very, very seriously at this point. It can't be haha Vanderbilt. No, this is top 10 Vanderbilt. So he's at Vanderbilt this week. He's got Texas A&M, which is undefeated, number 3 in the country in November, and he's at Oklahoma in November as well. If you remember last year, they got boat raced by Texas A&M. They got trounced by Alabama, fought very hard against Alabama this year, came close, but lost. I think it's like Missouri's one or two of those types of wins away from, he's still not going to be a direct personality match for Kiffin, but I think we could sort of put to bed some of the asterisks about what Drinkwitz has achieved at Missouri if he goes out and beats, Texas A&M and Oklahoma, or maybe it's an and/or. Maybe he doesn't have to beat both. Gets one of those two. I think that speaks volumes.
Well, you keep pointing to the Ole Miss Georgia game of 24 when Lane Kiffin's Ole Miss team went in there and really handled Georgia. Really, it looked like a national championship team on that day. I was trying to think, is there an Eli Drinkwitz game at Missouri you can point to and say, aha, see what he did there? Is there that kind of game?
I don't think so. I mean, they came so close to beating Georgia a couple years
Yeah,
ago
yeah,
in
but
Columbia,
coming
but
close,
close.
yeah,
I know coming close doesn't count. That's the thing. Like the masterpiece is not there. They had LSU in Columbia a couple years ago.
yeah.
Competitive game, high scoring game, very entertaining. That was the same season they came close against Georgia, but they didn't. They didn't beat them. I mean, he's got the win against Ohio State, but half the team opted out of that bowl. I mean, like that doesn't even
Yeah,
really that
yeah.
doesn't count. So no, I think you're right. Like that signature win. I guess it would be the blowout against Tennessee a couple years ago. That would probably be. It's not the same as beating Kirby and Georgia, but that would be the one. It was the 2023 season. Tennessee was ranked, went into Faurot Field and got skunked by 30 points. Tennessee went 9-4 that season. That's probably the Drinkwitz signature, which is not nothing. That was a nice win, but it's not smacking Georgia and Kirby Smart as Ole Miss did last year.
It's almost as though in those big games, if you go in and you get totally dismantled, well, then people look at it as though, well, there obviously the talent gap was enormous. What'd you expect? But if you play a close game, you come close against Alabama or somebody of that ilk, and you lose, it's like, well, yeah, they hung right in there. They were just as good, but did he get out coached? It's almost sometimes as though you'd be just coming close doesn't really help your credit rating.
Let's spend a few more minutes though on Lane Kiffin, John, because this is where all the attention is, and we can have all the debates of, well, what's the better job, Florida or Ole Miss. That's changed somewhat in this NIL era, transfer era. I think 5 years ago, it's no question, it's a slam dunk. If Lane Kiffin gets a phone call from Florida, as I put in a column this week, he would swim through a canal filled with live alligators to get to Florida if that call would have happened 5 years ago. The situation has changed, but we do know that Florida is one of these things that sort of draws to Lane Kiffin. He said he's one of the many coaches who idolized Steve Spurrier, his ex-wife Layla, with whom he has a good relationship now. They co-parent their children. Layla's living in Oxford. Layla went to the University of Florida. Her dad played there. Of course, Lane Kiffin's dad, Monty Kiffin, coached for many, many years at Tampa. Like I don't think the situation with Kiffin is just like comparing one job to the other, because if that's the case, Lane has Ole Miss to the place right now where Florida should be. I don't know if Florida's a better job in this particular moment than Ole Miss, but I think there are some other factors around the edge there, and we have to remember coaches are humans too. And if you idealize a certain job, if you idealize the idea of being Steve Spurrier 2.0, well, here's your chance, Lane Kiffin. You may not get another one. What do you think? Do you think he goes? Do you think he stays? What do you think he should do?
I think he should stay at Ole Miss.
Because
I'm not as high on. I'm not as high as probably the consensus opinion is on Florida football. Been following it a long time, and it's Urban Meyer, couple of championships, Steve Spurrier, domination of the SEC with 4 straight SEC titles in the 90s. But overall, I mean, you've had a lot of guys that just didn't excel there. Charlie Pell had it going in the right direction, but he broke a few NCAA rules along the way. That didn't help things. But I guess I'm not as enamored with that job as some people are. You talk about recruiting base in Florida. That's true, but everybody in the country recruits Florida. And I think now I'm more concerned about than recruiting base. I'm more concerned about NIL. That's if I were Lane Kiffin and I'm considering the Florida job, I want to know what kind of NIL deals can we make? If I want to go get quarterback B at the University of Washington, how much can we pay him? That's what I want to know. I'm uh, Now, would you rather live? Maybe he would rather live in Florida, in Gainesville, than Oxford. But Gainesville isn't. He's not going to be at Manhattan Beach like he
No.
was when. It's not a beach right there. It's 70 miles away. So he's got things going so well at Ole Miss. And I'm a believer in, if you're winning where you're not supposed to win, stay there. If they're paying you enough money, stay there, because he doesn't have if he drops off to 7-5 there, people aren't going Penn State on him. They aren't going to say he can't win the big ones, let's fire him. No, you're exceeding expectations.
I agree with you, John. I just wonder if coaches think that way. I'm with you. Like if it were me and I'm winning big at Ole Miss for $9 million a year, like Lane is, and really everybody's happy with him. I mean, sure, if they'd love for him to win a national championship, but they're not demanding he win a national championship. They're not booing him after victories like Florida fans were doing with Billy Napier. It had gotten so bad, Florida fans are booing Billy Napier whenever he wins. They're chanting "Fire Billy" in games that he wins. It's just a different level of expectation. All these SEC jobs have huge expectations, but it is different between Florida and Ole Miss. So I'm with you. I just wonder if coaches look that way. And Ole Miss, loses to Georgia this past week. They have a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter. They lose to Georgia. And next they have a road game at Oklahoma this weekend. If Ole Miss and Kiffin lose that game, the way these coaches think and the ego on these coaches, is Lane going to look himself in the mirror and say, maybe this is my professional peak. Maybe this is just who I am, what I am. I'm a 9-3, 10-2 coach. No, coaches don't do that. They look themselves in the mirror and they say, I'm not the problem. My employer's the problem. And guess how much I would win if I were at Florida? Now, I'm not saying that's right. I'm saying I think most coaches, maybe not all coaches, but most coaches, when they're looking themselves in the mirror after a loss, they think, yeah, just what I would do somewhere else, right? I mean, ask Mark Stoops what he thinks he would be if he wasn't at Kentucky and somewhere else. He'd be building statues of him, right? And so I'm just wondering, what's Lane Kiffin going to think if Ole Miss loses to Oklahoma? I think he's going to start wondering, maybe I've hit my ceiling here, and my ceiling could be bigger at Florida.
That's so important, coach, for coaches. I mean, if they have national championship aspirations, and most of them do, if they're having success, they always think of that trophy. But I can go back decades and remember in the 1979 season, Bobby Bowden was at Florida State, and LSU was in the midst of a coaching search that went on all season. One of the dumbest things in the history of college football. They had a lame duck coach. They spent the year looking for their next coach. But Bobby Bowden didn't take the LSU job. And I was talking to him the year after in a phone conversation. He said, well, I was thinking at Florida State with that team I had, if I can't beat, he was played LSU at Tiger Stadium. And he won the game. It wasn't extremely close. He won the game. And he said, if I hadn't won that game and I thought, well, this is the best I can do. If I can't win that kind of game at Florida State, maybe I do need to go somewhere else. But he won the game, and he went on and created one of the great dynasties in college football at Florida State in the 80s and 90s, and won 2 national titles. So, yeah, coaches think like that. They think my ceiling. They think about, have I worn out my welcome here? If I've raised expectations too much, where this is the only way I can go now is down. They think
if I'm hitting my ceiling, is the problem me or is the problem the school? Oftentimes, I think the problem is not necessarily the school, it's the coach. Like when Brian Kelly left Notre Dame for LSU, what we're finding out is Notre Dame was not the problem. Brian
It
Kelly,
was the coach.
yeah, it's just he is who he is. He's a good
Well,
program builder. He wins most of his games, but he doesn't win the biggest games. And so, but coaches don't think like that. They think, well, the school's the problem. I'm going to go over here and win a national championship. So I don't know. And I do think, John, that there was a time, maybe he still does, that Lane Kiffin romanticized that Florida job, and particularly the idea of being Steve Spurrier 2.0 to a fan base that, as you know, craves a Steve Spurrier 2.0.
Well, sure. They always crave what it was in the glory days and the best of times. Urban Meyer was able to recreate that. But Lane Kiffin, and I wonder how much he thinks about his last dream job. His last dream job was Southern California, understandably. It's one of those iconic college football programs. But when he took that job, there was nothing iconic about it. It was a trouble situation with limitations. He left Tennessee for that. I guess I would think he regrets that move to Southern Cal. But it was his dream job, and that it's hard to shake that. But now that he's gone through that and it didn't work out, would that come to mind now when he's considering, oh, Florida's the job I want? Be careful what you wish for.
I guess I look at this. If job security is your number one priority, and maybe quality of life in so much as like expectations and pressure affect your quality of life, I think he should stay at Ole Miss. If the goal is to pursue a national championship, I don't know that he can do it any more easily at Florida than he could do it at Ole Miss in this NIL transfer era. I think with the right coach, you can chase a championship anywhere. You can chase a championship in Bloomington, Indiana. However, he's been at Ole Miss for several seasons with his best team, which I actually think was last year. He didn't make the playoff. Maybe if that is the goal and you're willing to accept the higher pressure, the higher expectations, give up that job security, maybe take a shot at Florida. Because I think the money would be there. I think that the money is going to be wherever Lane Kiffin is. I don't think you're living in the poorhouse if you're Lane Kiffin and you're coaching a program. That the boosters are going to pony up to a certain extent, I think, for Lane Kiffin. And I think the talent would be there. We've seen how quickly he can flip a roster. I mean, this is the portal king. Florida would have a talented roster, very talented roster in year one if he's there. Does that give him better? Does he have a better chance to win a national championship at Florida or not? I don't know, but I've seen what it looks like for him at Ole Miss. The unknown on the other side is sometimes appealing. That's kind of the way I look at it. You choose job security, quality of life, lower expectations versus who knows what might be on the other side of this fence. Maybe it's a national championship.
I really like the way you were going with that thought of the coach asked himself, is the place the problem? Or maybe I'm the problem. And they don't want to answer that honestly.
No.
I thought last year's Ole Miss team was second only to Ohio State in talent. I thought it was as talented or more talented than Texas. And he didn't win a championship. He didn't make the playoffs, and he had a very accommodating schedule. It had nothing to do with where he was. He assembled this team by being in Oxford, Mississippi. So he's got the players. Why didn't he win it? Well, maybe he was the problem. Maybe he needs to change something. Maybe he could learn from that. But I'm just saying, if you look at that team and you ask that question, you can't blame that. Well, I couldn't do that at Ole Miss. No, you did the work. You did the hard work. You built a team that could win a championship.
I want to spend a few minutes on a couple other candidates, but final thing on Kiffin, John, because he is such an important name in this search. I can't think of another search. I'm sure there is one. I'm just not thinking about it right now. But to have one particular name just so associated with the search, because he is a perfect fit for what Florida wants and needs, is Lane Kiffin. So I want to finish with this. If Lane Kiffin spends the next 5 seasons at Ole Miss. I think we both believe he'll make the playoff at some point, might make the playoff this year, probably make the playoff multiple times. I think we would both say if he goes to Florida, he can make the playoff. My question is national championship. If Lane Kiffin spends the next 5 years at Ole Miss, so I'll give you this season and 5 more after this one, will Lane Kiffin win a national championship at Ole Miss? And same question at Florida. Next 5 seasons at Florida, would he win a national championship at Florida?
That's a good question. It's almost impossible to answer because it's hard to win a national championship. So, no, I don't think he'll win one at Ole Miss.
Do you think he would win one in 5 years at Florida?
No.
Okay. And maybe that's the argument to stay put. And that could be what you if you're not going to win one either place, maybe stay right where you're at, where they already love you.
It's like I'm arguing with myself because I really like Kiffin as a coach. And then when I'm making an argument, I keep thinking about what you said, and I go back to last season when he couldn't beat Kentucky. Mm-hmm. So that's why not? What happened there? I mean, that's on him. It's not on Ole Miss. That's on him. So if he couldn't make the playoff with that team, why do I think he'll win a championship at Florida?
Yeah. All right, we'll see where it goes. Another name that we got into on the love it, like it, or no thanks. I'm not as I'll tell you, I'm not in at all, John. This is one area we disagree on. I'm not in at all on the idea of James Franklin to Florida. I think there's a number of places that either are open or could open where I could see James Franklin doing a nice job there and them having a productive tenure together, school and coach. Florida, I just don't see it. James Franklin is not a quarterback developer. I don't think of him as a top offensive mind. I don't think of him having a personality that entertains people. And so when I just think about fit, and I know we talk about a lot on this podcast, fit only matters so much. If you're losing games, it doesn't help you that much. And if you're winning games, you can overcome a little bit of a peculiar fit. But when I just think about James Franklin at Florida and what Florida fans so badly want is Steve Spurrier 2.0, I just don't see it with James Franklin. I think he's a good coach. I think he's a good program builder. He never wins the big games. But beyond, it's not just the lack of big game victories. For me, the problem of James Franklin at Florida is just, like I said, he's just so much the opposite of what Florida fans want. And when I see a fan base that's booing a head coach when he is winning a game and chanting "Fire Billy" even in a game he wins, like you see, if you don't give fans what they want, they can turn on you quickly. And I just don't think Florida, James Franklin, and would be a fit for what that fan base and booster base wants.
Well, again, get back to your question on Kiffin applied to James Franklin. Do I think James Franklin would win a national title in 5 years at Florida? No, I don't. I think he'll win a bunch of games. I think he'd build a strong roster. He'd recruit well and beat the teams he's supposed to beat. And I'm not locking in on this big game things. A big game is usually the game you don't win. If you don't win, if you don't win a championship, I mean, Ryan Day, he couldn't win the big game. Now he's a national championship coach. It's not that. It's just he was there at Penn State 11 years and had great success. And I'm not sure Penn State will get anybody better. But I don't know who I would say, well, they'll win a national championship at Florida. I don't look at the Florida job that way.
And one more name, John, before we pivot on to other topics. You said no thanks on Alex Golesh, whose USF team is scoring a lot of points, who went into the swamp and won. You covered him. I covered him when he was the offensive coordinator at Tennessee. It's Josh Heupel's offense, but Alex Golesh was the OC in that 2022 season, which remains as good as the Tennessee offense has ever looked. I think the issue for Alex Golesh and the Florida job is ADs schools, they always want to do the opposite of what they did last time. Last time they hired a group of 5 coach, Billy Napier, he stunk. So this time they'll try to do the opposite of that. I actually think that's a very poor way to conduct your coaching search. Just because the last guy stunk and this guy is succeeding at a group of 5 school doesn't mean in any way that Alex Golish would be the second coming of Billy Napier. I actually think he's a promising coach and a bright offensive coach who could put up a lot of points, which is what Florida wants. But you said no thanks, and I'm wondering, is that because just the thinking of, well, they're not going to repeat what they did last time, or do you just think Florida really needs someone with Power 4 experience?
Well, you brought that up, and it's a very salient point. You brought that up in our routine 6-hour prep meeting for the podcast. So, and I was thinking about it, and no, that shouldn't, just because this guy didn't get it done or that guy didn't get it done, doesn't mean the next one won't, just because they kind of fit in the same box. But again, what you said about a coach that fans would like, if they get an Alex Golish, I don't think fans will be excited about that. And doesn't mean he won't be successful, but anytime things go wrong, the fans are going to think, oh, well, what do you expect? I mean, they might as well rehire James McElwain or Dan Mullen or somebody that had been successful at perhaps a lower level. I know Mullen was at Mississippi State, but he wasn't a championship contender there. It was different than Florida. So I guess what I'm saying, I want somebody that fans will embrace, that they will get excited about. And some of those fans that get excited have a lot of money. And so I'm looking at NIL resources. Lane Kiffin, you hire him, the NIL money's coming. You bring back Urban Meyer, the NIL money's coming.
I think shy of Lane Kiffin and Urban Meyer, I'm not sure Florida fans are going to be satisfied with whoever they trot out. They've really built.
See, yeah, the names you brought up, a lot, these are good coaches. I think Sumrall is a promising coach. I always look at guys who've won wherever they've been. You look at the track record. They're competing against programs with similar resources, and they're winning. So that's a good sign. Lashley, he's done well. He's an offensive coach. But is it somebody Florida will get excited about? Not really. So now that I think about it, I don't think the Florida's job is as great as other people do. And now you're telling me how hard it is, and I'm saying it too, to please Florida fans. Maybe they ought to just keep Billy Napier, and they can complain all the time.
They could boo him after victories.
Yeah, let's boo Billy. It's boo Billy Day. Boo Billy Day in the swamp.
Every day in the swamp. John, would you rather have the Penn State job or the Florida job?
No, I don't want to live in Pennsylvania, so tried that once.
Oh, okay. So that's where you're
Florida job, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. See, from a coaching perspective, I think the Penn State job's a better job. You hide out
I
in the
do
Big
too.
Ten.
Oh,
yeah.
You're
just thinking about where you get to live. Okay.
Yeah. If I'm forgetting living conditions and cold winters, yeah, I would take the Penn State job.
All right, we'll have probably much more to say on the Florida job in the weeks to come as that search unfolds, where we have our eye, as we always do, on the hot seat across the land. And boy, it's a hot one in the SEC this season already. Arkansas is open. Florida's open. Those are 2 jobs, by the way, John and I told you in the preseason would probably open. They were Sam Pittman was at the top of our hot seat list. Billy Napier was near the top. Someone else who was in the number 2 position on my hot seat list in the preseason, John, Hugh Freeze, now lost 4 in a row at Auburn. And I'm just wondering, maybe you can explain this for me, John. Probably be a better question for Hugh Freeze's boss, John Cohen, but since I have a different John here with me today, John Adams, explain to me how Hugh Freeze still has a job at Auburn at this point.
Because Hugh Freeze was a good fit for Auburn.
So foot fit has bought him enough time.
I think it real. Oh, I'm not joking. I
No,
really
I
think
think you're
it
right.
has.
I think you're spot on. I think that's what it is too. Yeah.
If this was Brian Harson's twin brother Brett, they would have fired him already.
They would have fired him in week 2 of his first season. I think you're exactly right. And in fact, I'll go back to it. Here's what Hugh Freeze said after his 4th consecutive SEC loss. This one to Missouri.
I love his post-game stuff.
This one to Missouri in overtime. Hugh Freeze's comment was, quote, "I certainly know we fit what Auburn is all about, but Auburn is about winning football." Well, it's not anymore. Auburn hasn't been about winning football for the last 5 seasons, but Hugh is right. He does fit what Auburn wants culturally out of their coach, and I think that has brought him this far. But in so much as Auburn still cares about winning football, I think his runways run out that he can squeeze out of the fit factor. That's done, and I think he's on his last leg here. And the schedule does ease up. Do you think Hugh can coach his way back here? He's sitting at 3-4, hasn't had a winning record yet in his tenure, but the upcoming schedule does provide a little bit of daylight, not much, but a little bit of daylight. They're at Arkansas this week, home against Kentucky, at Vanderbilt, home against Mercer, home in the Iron Bowl. He's 3-4. Best he can do is 8-4. Do you think 7-5? He loses even one of those games. Is 7-5 enough to get Hugh Freeze a 4th season?
I don't think so.
No.
However, if he wins out and he beats Alabama, yes. So there's still a very narrow path to continue as Auburn's coach.
He's got to win out. Yeah.
I've been thinking about this season when I watch Florida with Napier and Hugh Freeze at Auburn. I mean, they've had successful careers overall. Both of the coaches have, when you think about it. Do you think coaches after a while start to look like their record? And when I look at Billy Napier on the sidelines, I think, man, he looks like a losing coach. He acts like a losing coach. And I look at Hugh Freeze walking off the field after his latest loss, and I thought, yeah, if I didn't know what his record was, I think I could have guessed it really close.
I think there's something to that. You're right. And I think it's the strain and the stress and the boo birds, all that adds up. And at some point, you just become a broken coach, I think.
It sounds so tragic.
Yeah, it is. And look, I mean, I think, all kidding aside, I think Billy Napier, he'd win the good guy award, but at some point he became a broken coach. And I think he's been continuing on as a broken coach for really more than a year at Florida. Frankly, I don't know how they ever won 4 in a row last season. It was the last gasp of a broken coach, but I think he became a broken coach at Florida. I think Hugh Freeze has become a broken coach at Auburn when they don't have the answers, and they know. Normally when you look in the mirror, you're going 9-3. You say it's someone else's fault. I went 9-3 and not 11-1. When you just lose game after game after game, at some point I think it breaks you, and you can't look at that mirror anymore and say someone else is the problem. At some point deep down, maybe I just can't fix this thing. Maybe I'm the problem. And that's a tough existence for a profession that almost demands you to have a huge ego of I'm invincible. Nobody can stop me. At some point, I think these guys become broken a little bit as a coach. I think Hugh Freeze is a broken coach at all.
Well, we're talking about a breaking point. I think what happens is when you've had success,
yeah,
as both coaches have, they've won at other places. All through your career, you're winning. You have a system, you have a plan, and you win, and you have success. And when you reach a point where that system, that plan doesn't work right anymore, that's traumatizing, I think. It's like, I'm still doing A, B, and C, but I'm not getting the same results. What's wrong? This is what I've always done, and I've always won, but it's not working anymore. And then you got to do something really drastic. you got to go Clark Lee and hire the coach at New Mexico State and the quarterback to run your offense. You got to get desperate. It's work for Clark Lee. It doesn't always work for people.
Yeah, maybe that's the problem with Hugh Freeze. Maybe he didn't get desperate enough. He certainly didn't a year ago when he stayed the course with Peyton Thorne at quarterback. That was a terrible decision. And then he brought in Jackson Arnold off the scrap heap. That didn't change the quarterback situation. And I mean, Hugh Freeze, it's not just that they're losing. It's when you've lost your fastball and what you used to make your living on was fastball. This was someone who was a card-carrying member of Club Guru. He was an offensive guru. They they print out the membership cards. Not really, but if they did, he would have had one. And then when you lose your fastball, he was a heat thrower, a flamethrower, and then all of a sudden he doesn't have his fastball anymore. He's not an offensive guy. The biggest issue in their program, they have no offense. Their offense stinks. Their quarterback stunk for 3 straight seasons.
That makes it worse. It's as though he wants to hold up a sign that says offensive guru here so the other team can see it, the fans can see. Oh yeah, and the defense just crumbles in the face of that sign.
And nobody's worried about that sign anymore. It's like one of those broken down restaurants, where there's like a couple letters still flickering. You can't tell what it says, but it's like, I think something used to be here.
Yeah, it's supposed to say good food, but instead it says God fod or something. It just doesn't work.
Something else that's not working. We're going to get to our picks in a minute here, John. But you were I had to ask you about this because you were so high on LSU in the preseason. I was pretty high too. I'm not going to run from that. I thought LSU was going to have a really fine season. I thought they built a nice roster. I'm out on this LSU team. I've been out on this LSU team. You remember I picked Vanderbilt in our picks segment last week. I'm out on this team, and I am close to being out on the Brian Kelly era at LSU. Again, I think he's a good coach. I think he's a great program builder, consistent winner. But when they brought him there, if you had told me that the playoff would expand to 12 teams, and in year 4, mathematically they're still alive for the playoff. This does not look like a playoff team. That he wouldn't be any closer to the playoff in year 4 than he was in year 1. I don't think I would have believed that. I'm getting to the point where I'm pretty close to being out on Brian Kelly at LSU. If I'm not there already, where are you at?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I watched the Vanderbilt LSU game very closely. And although I picked LSU to beat the spread, I actually picked Vanderbilt to win the game. And that shows how drastically my opinion has changed of LSU. I thought it had the best roster in college football going into the season. It's just not that good. The offensive line's horrible. First, the run blocking was bad, and then all of a sudden, they can't pass protect Garrett Nussmeier, who was actually throwing the ball better than he has all season. And I bet if you put a radar gun on him, his passes had a higher speed than they have all season because he's had an arm issue, upper body issue that affected his throwing. But the thing about that game, Blake, was watching Vanderbilt just line up and whip LSU play after play after play at the line of scrimmage. That's Vanderbilt now.
Vanderbilt is a playoff contender, are they not, John?
Yes, they are. Definitely.
Yeah. They absolutely are if they beat Missouri this week. That is it's not an elimination game mathematically, but whoever wins that game, Missouri or Vanderbilt, coming out of that with one loss and a resume booster there for the winning side, I think undeniably is a playoff contender, the winning side in that game.
Yeah. I mean, you look at LSU and just say, see, we got fooled in the season opener. We go into that game thinking LSU, Clemson, those are 2 playoff teams. This is one of the biggest games of the year. And LSU beats Clemson. But now we know, well, yeah, it beat Clemson. Everybody beats Clemson.
Yeah, that was the Liberty Bowl. It wasn't a play. We thought it was a playoff preview. In hindsight, that was the Liberty Bowl. All love to our friends at the Liberty Bowl, but
you get
my point.
Flashback to my last press box experience there. Couldn't find an outlet, but never mind.
It's interesting with Brian Kelly. I wrote about this on Sunday because it's easy to do these hindsight analysis, but I think we wondered this on the front end. As I put it, when LSU hired Brian Kelly, they paid for a national championship coach, but they got Brian Kelly. Like I think Brian Kelly told them who he was at Notre Dame with his long track record of performance there. He was a consistent winner. Count on him for 8, 9, 10 wins a season pretty consistently, but he wasn't a shark. He couldn't he always get up to a certain point and kind of bump his head, and you wonder, is it Notre Dame or is it the coach? It's always easy to do these things in hindsight, but it's starting to look like it was the coach. And this is just who Brian Kelly is, which is not a terrible coach, but he's not a shark who was ready for the SEC, or at least in the way that LSU thought. They thought they were paying for a national championship coach. They got Brian Kelly.
Well, look at what Brian Kelly's done. Look at his resume. He's won wherever he's been. No matter where he was. He's James Franklin at Penn State. Yeah. Brian Kelly at Notre Dame was James Franklin at Penn State. And we thought, I thought with Brian Kelly, it's like there are some limitations at Notre Dame. There's some huge advantages, obviously, but there are some. I always think their academic standards can get in the way. Now, I don't know if they still do, but that was a problem for other coaches there in the past. But I'm thinking, well, he can get more players at LSU than he can at Notre Dame. Well, he's gotten the players. He's gotten enough players, although I don't know what he thought his offensive line would look like this year. LSU's got all the money in the world to spend, and that's your offensive line? Now we're talking talent evaluation.
I think, final thought on Brian Kelly, I think he survives this season. His buyout would be around $53 million, and maybe buyouts don't matter anymore, but I do think they still give you some pause when they're that monsters. I think Brian Kelly is going to survive this season unless it really gets off the rails, which it could. I think he's going to survive the season and go into 2026 on a very hot seat. I think Hugh Freeze gets fired. I think Brian Kelly survives to 2026. What's your final assessment on those two?
I agree that Brian Kelly gets another year. And you're right, hot seat. And I always look, it's always good to have multiple coaches on the hot seat. I'm just thinking about scanning a list of teams who could be on the hot seat. Yeah, it's hot seat, but yeah, he would be. And Mark Stoops, I think, survives this season. He was the fourth guy that I thought would be fired this year.
I texted you, John, during that Texas-Kentucky game. I said, if Mark Stoops pulls this one out against Kentucky, they'll hand him a 30-year contract extension. Kentucky fans who are done with Mark Stoops, you better be glad they blew that opportunity. I don't mean they're not going to fire Mark Stoops, but they would have had the 30-year contract extension ready for him to sign.
Yeah. Here you go, Coach. Just bring Mitch Barnard, the AD, brings it down in the locker room. Yeah. Sign here, Coach. 30 more years.
Yeah, we got the statue ready. Should we just put that on the midfield logo?
Man, I can see you still winning at 85.
I know you think the world of Mark Stoops, John. So
I do.
But yeah, he was so close to having that 30-year contract extension. All right, let's get to our picks. Don't look now. I am at 500 after a 3-2 week. You're playing catch up, John, but you already knew that. 1-4. You're 18-22. We're both hanging around Billy Napier territory. Unfortunately, there will be no buyout for either of us. Hopefully, we get hot and don't need it. All right, here's my 5-pack of picks this week. As we always do, we'll have 4 SEC games. We can pick any 4 SEC games we want, plus a lock of the week. Here's mine. Auburn is a 1.5-point favorite on the road at Arkansas. Give me Arkansas on the points. They're scoring under Bobby Petrino. They're coming close. I think they get it done this week and beat and battle Hugh Freeze. I don't think Auburn can score enough points to keep up. So give me Arkansas and the 1.5 points at home.
Well,
Alabama.
Excuse me, but does Auburn then fire Hugh Freeze
I think so.
Sunday the next day?
I think so. If you lose to Arkansas,
I
think you're done.
Yeah. And remember when Auburn tried to hire Bobby Petrino?
Right.
When it already had a coach?
maybe they can hire Bobby. He wants a job.
Just come on back with us, Bobby.
Yeah. Leave Hugh at Arkansas.
Yeah.
Bring Bobby back to the Plains.
Okay.
I'm in on Alabama, John. I don't know that Alabama is quote unquote back. I don't really know what that means. The dynasty's over, but I'm in on Alabama as being one of the best teams, maybe the best team in the SEC. Of course, Texas A&M keeps winning too, but Alabama's impressing me. I don't know how they ever lost in week 1 to Florida State, but I'm giving the 13.5 points, taking Alabama on the road at South Carolina. I've been snake bit a little bit by Tennessee covering these spreads, but I'm sticking with them. I'm giving 9.5, taking Tennessee to cover on the road at Kentucky. Kentucky's going to be gassed by taking Texas to overtime. I'm going down with the ship on Texas. I keep picking them. I don't know why, but I didn't like any other games this week. So I'm giving the 6.5 and taking Texas to cover by a touchdown on the road at Mississippi State. And my lock of the week, I really like what South Florida has. I think they are the best group of 5 team in the country. I think Alex Golish is going to be coaching somewhere at a Power 4 job next season. South Florida, though, has a big one for their playoff hopes this weekend. 3.5-point favorite on the road to Memphis, coming off of a loss to UAB. I am giving the 3.5 points, taking South Florida to cover as Alex Golish polishes his coaching resume to be at some Power 4 school next season.
Yeah, I agree with you on South Florida. I've watched it several games. That's a good pick. I probably would agree with every one of those picks. I didn't pick all those games. I'm going with my leadoff pick is Texas A&M minus 2.5 versus LSU. I know it's in Tiger Stadium, but watching that team play, what difference does it make? We already beaten that horse to death or that tiger to death. It's just not playing well. In Texas A&M, there's a voice in the back of my head and said, they will let you down. They will let you down because they always do. But maybe they won't let me down this Saturday. A&M might be the best team in the SEC. I think if they played Alabama this week, I'd probably, if it was in Tuscaloosa, I'd pick Alabama. I don't know about if it were College Station, but I'll go with A&M minus 2.5 against 2.5 against LSU. I agree with you on Tennessee. It's not covering, but gosh, Tennessee's defense is just porous. It's given up 36.5 points per game in the SEC. Everybody scores, but Kentucky's offense just that doesn't threaten you. That I don't think it can capitalize enough on Tennessee's defensive problems. So I'll take Tennessee. Agree with you. I'll take Alabama and give the 13.5. But I think there could be a letdown though, because Alabama's been used to these 4 games. I don't really. More I think about that, I don't know if I like that pick. Yeah,
you want to take South Carolina and get those 13.5 points?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch.
Wow, stunning pivot.
Yeah, at the line, just call an audible. Unlike what Tennessee did at the end of the first half against Alabama. I'll take South Carolina. That's how scientific this is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Record. Yeah, I don't want to. Not only will
I'm
just
cooling on that pick this very second. Flip
yeah.
the other way.
Okay. And then my lock of the week. And I rarely venture into the Big Ten, but I'm taking Minnesota, rowing my boat with PJ Fleck, plus 8.5 against Iowa at Iowa. I watch Minnesota just beat Nebraska to death.
Yeah, like a drum. So much for Matt Rule to Penn State. Good luck with that.
Dylan Raiola got sacked 9 times. I thought he just might. I mean, he can go anywhere and play. I just saw he's. Thanks, guys. I came back and gave this Nebraska thing a shot from my dad, but it's done. I'll see you. So, yeah, and Minnesota ran the ball. Drake Lindsey is redshirt freshman quarterback. I really like him. And Iowa can only score so many points. So I think Minnesota's run defense is terrific. So I'll take Minnesota. That's my lock. And Cody's lock, my betting advisor, he's rolling with Toledo, getting a 1.5 against somebody. I forgot who he said it was. Washington State, I believe.
You and Cody follow those MAC teams more than
yeah,
anybody I know. John, you need one more. You need one more SEC pick. You got Texas A&M, Tennessee, South Carolina.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm taking Oklahoma against Ole Miss.
You're taking Oklahoma to cover the 4.5?
Yeah.
You think Lane's going to be distracted by Florida?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
I don't know if I like that pick either. I think I'm going to change it and take Ole Miss plus 4.5.
Boy, we really.
Well, I'm scrambling.
I'm
struggling. I'm what I said these coaches are. They're starting to look like their record. I'm starting to look like my record. I look like a loser, and I'm picking like a loser. Desperate, last-second decisions. Yeah.
Too many men on the field. Not enough men on the field.
Yeah.
Delay a game.
Yeah, we couldn't get our holder out there to kick a field goal at the end of the game.
John, what's your buyout? You got one of them $20 million buyouts?
No, my buyout is turn in your key card, please.
I hope we never have to find out. Have too much fun. Thanks for listening to this edition of SEC Football Unfiltered.